Hi, this is Chuck Kuntz, back again to show you how to create the spreadsheet that we were looking at previously. So from my Windows desktop, I'm going to launch Microsoft Excel. And again, I've configured the software so that the shortcut resides in the quick launch toolbar just to make it convenient. So I'm going to click on the shortcut icon, and Excel opens into a blank worksheet. Okay, actually, I have several worksheets that are available to me, but the worksheet that it opens up to is worksheet 1. And before I begin solving the gradebook problem, I want to just very quickly uh, give you an overview of the user interface. Um, if you review the lecture outline, many of the things that I'm going to talk about are included in the vocabulary terms. But just so that I can explain these and use the proper terminology in the process, I'm going to very quickly do an overview. So as we look at the top of the screen, you'll notice that Excel presents it in a standard Office format where we have multiple pages that can be accessed by clicking on the page tabs. Associated with each of the pages is a toolbar. The toolbar is divided up into uh, areas known as ribbons. So tools that are very, very similar are placed on the same ribbon. And then beyond the toolbar, we see the all-important formula bar. And so this is important because eventually I'm going to be inserting computational expressions into the spreadsheet, and I may have a need to see how the computation is being performed, see the algebraic expression, or see the actual details of the function. So if I click on a cell where a computational expression, be it a formula or function, if I click on a cell where a computational expression has been inserted, I'll see the results displaying in the grid. I'll see the results of the calculation being displayed in the grid, but I'll also see the actual computational expression through the formula bar. And so if necessary, I can go in and make some editing changes, or I can just examine it and see how the calculation is being performed. So there's actually two different views then of the computational expression. From the grid, I'll see the result of the calculation, and from the formula bar, I'll see the actual expression itself. A second reason that the formula bar is important is that regardless of whether I have a formula, function, or just data stored in a spreadsheet cell, if I ever want to go back into that cell and tweak it, make some kind of surgical correction, some editing change to the contents of the cell, I can do that by clicking on the cell and then making the editing change through the formula bar. So again, formula bar allows me to see computational expressions, and it also allows me to make editing changes to existing data within a cell. All right, continuing on, as we know from before, we have many, many columns that are then labeled with alphabetic characters across the top of the screen. So the first 26 columns are columns A through Z. 27th column is AA, 28th column AB, and so forth. And if we look along the left edge of the screen, there are numbers that identify each of the rows. And where a row and a column intersect, you have a storage location called a cell. And if I had to say what's the most important, most fundamental feature of a spreadsheet, I'd probably say spreadsheet cell. It's the cell that we use to store data, computational expressions, and a number of other objects. All right, so how do I go from cell to cell? Well, I can click, move around with the mouse and click, I can use the directional arrow keys, so there's a couple of ways to navigate through the spreadsheet cells. As I go from cell to cell, there's a rectangular highlight called a cell pointer that marks the active cell or the cell that is ready to be used. And whatever cell the cell pointer is on can be referenced by its column row coordinates. Okay, so currently the cell pointer is on cell A4. Also, make note that in the bottom right corner of the cell pointer is a little square that's known as a fill handle, and I'll be using that here in a moment as a sort of a shortcut way to change the contents of adjacent cells, and I'll demonstrate all the details of that momentarily. All right, now if I want to change the column widths here, one way of doing this, and there's a number of ways that I can do this, but one way is to manually just drag on the dividing line between the columns, and so I'll do that, and I'm going to change the width of column A and column B, expand it, because it's in column A and column B that I want to store the student's last name and first name. So I'm going to go ahead and type in a label here, last name, and I'm just typing in free text. This can be anything I want. Whatever I type is going to appear to the user. So I'll put in first name. If I misspell something, no big deal. Might embarrass myself, but it's certainly not going to cause me any problem other than a little embarrassment. So I have last name, first name, and then if you recall from the previous video, I executed a copy command on the list of names in hopes that I could paste those into the spreadsheet. Now, I'm not sure that's still on the clipboard, but we'll try it. I'm going to use the Windows command Control V, V as in Victor, and looks like my names are not on the spreadsheet or in the clipboard, therefore I can't transfer that data. So I'm going to have to type these names in, and let's see, there was Horowitz and Moses, and there were two other Horowitz, if you recall. There was Samuel and Jerome. Now, notice what I'm doing. I'll back up again. I'm going to place the cell pointer on cell A2 where Horowitz is, I guess it's spelled correctly, where Horowitz is stored, and I'm going to drag, I'm going to point at the fill handle, click, and then drag down, and that should copy the contents of cell A2 into cell A3 and cell A4. And when it copies, I'm going to point this out now, I'll talk about it several more times as I proceed. When it copies that text value, it's going to copy it in an absolute way. In other words, it's going to, as I fill into cells A3 and A4, it's going to copy that base value exactly the way it's stored in cell A2 in the base cell. Now I'll go ahead and put in my other characters here. So here's Samuel, and here's Jerome, and we'll put in Feinberg, Larry, and there was Besser. Hopefully I'm spelling these right. Joe. All right, and again, this is my list of students, and I have column headings across row 1 that's going to make it easy to identify what's stored in, cells below that. Now, I intend to give 3 tests. I'm going to put in T1, T2, T3 as labels. Column headings, I intend to give 3 quizzes, Q1, Q2, Q3, and I intend to give 3 projects, Project 1, Project 2, Project 3. Now, there's nothing magical about 3 tests, 3 quizzes, 3 projects. Just, I decided to structure things that way in the course. When the course is over, I'm going to want to calculate a weighted average, and I'm going to want to assign a letter grade, and then I want to indicate whether they pass the course or fail the course. Okay, so I've put these column headings along row 1, and I'm going to highlight the column headings and then go to the home page, and on the font ribbon I'll use the fill bucket. I'm going to fill with 25% white background darker. Alright, so I'm going to use one of the fill colors, and if I use shades of gray, it tends to show up better if I print it on a black and white printer. So you might be inclined to use yellow or something maybe a little brighter. That works fine if you're looking at a spreadsheet on a computer screen, but if you send it to the printer, I know for certain yellow does not print well on a black and white printer. All right, now I don't recall what grades these students have, so I'm going to so I can make this video as brief as possible, I'm going to fast forward through the semester. I'm going to pretend that I, at the beginning of the semester, get my class roster, probably copy that from, data that's stored on the school's administrative system, and go ahead and set up my spreadsheet with all the columns and everything, then save it. So I'm going to click the disk icon, navigate to the folder where I want to save it. So in my case, I'm going to save it right here, and this is going to be, I'm going to name these in a way that I can recognize, what they are. So this is going to be module 1 gbEx2 GB, as in gradebook. So this is example 2 gradebook, and save it. And now everything that I've typed in is stored on my hard drive, so if I lose power or something, I should be able to go back and retrieve the data. All right, so the natural thing to do at this point would be to close up the spreadsheet, go about my business, teach a while, and then give a project. Let's say we give a first project, and we make it an easy project. In fact, it is so easy that everybody gets a 100. So a time saver here would be, rather than typing in 100, then 100, then 100, doing that over and over again, an easy way to go about assigning 100 to all the cells that would be I2 through I6. The easy way to do this would be to type it into cell I2, strike the enter key, and then use the fill handle and drag down and release, and it will copy that base value of 100 in an absolute way into all the adjacent cells. So there we have it. I would save and go about my business, fast forward, and I give a quiz. And we're going to pretend that Mo is the brains of the brainy one in the class. So he gets a 99, and Samuel, otherwise known as Shemp, not so bright, gets a 66. Jerome, otherwise known as Curly, not very bright either, gets a 33. Larry, pretty bright guy, gets an 88. And Joe, he gets a 77. Okay, so I give a quiz, collect them, grade them, record the grades, hand them back. And one of the things I might want to do here is use a feature that few people use, but I think it's wonderful, and that is the comment feature. So where I have a label Q1, I'm going to right-click on that cell, and I have an option on the pop-up menu to insert a comment. And I'm going to put a comment that this is quiz given in class on, make up a date, 9/23 or something, 9/23/2013, and hit the return key, click off of it. Now, you'll notice there's a little mark here, and what happens is that comment stays out of view unless I mouse over it, and if I mouse over it, then I can see whatever's been typed in. So this is handy. Many times, you know, certainly as a teacher, you'll give a number of quizzes, number of projects, number of assign a number of things. And students at the end of the semester will go, what, you don't have a grade recorded for quiz 1? Well, I don't even remember ever taking that. And I can go back and say, well, let's see here now. That was a quiz that was given on 9/23. And they might say, oh, yeah, I remember I was absent that day. So that is a handy feature. And again, I right click on the cell and choose insert comment to be able to use it. All right, so I'm going to just very quickly again start entering data. We're going to say that I give another project, and let's say I give, I'll just do this in kind of the normal sequence. I give another project. It's very easy, so I'm going to drag by the fill handle on the value that's stored in cell I2, and I'm going to drag it to the right this time instead of dragging it down, so I can do that, and copy it into J2. And once it's copied into J2, I could copy it down like that, and there we have it. We're going to pretend we give another quiz, and we'll pretend this quiz is a little harder. So Mo gets a 90, use the directional arrow keys, and Shemp gets a 67, and Larry gets a 44. Larry gets a 77. And Joe gets a 66. Okay, so more grades recorded in the grade book, and continue to fast forward. I'm going to give another project. This project is not as easy, so 66, 77, 99, 55. All right, so I've entered in some project grades. I'll save them. Better give some tests. Now, normally I would probably give them the test sooner than this, but we'll give a test, and we give Mo a 100, and we give this guy a 33, and a 66, and a 66, and 44. And give another test here, Mo 99, and give this guy a 77. Ooh, 666. That's a frightening grade. 67, how's that? And 88. So I'm just making up a bunch of stuff, as you can see. And 88, how's that? All right, so we're near the end of the semester now, and what the heck? Let's say that I have a big heart, and I give an easy quiz, and I'll just use the fill handle and copy that down, give everybody a 100. So there's the grades. We're near the end of the semester, and all that's really left to be done is to give test 3, grade things, record the grades, calculate the average, and assign the course grades. So it might be that, let's say who would come in. Let's say that Larry comes in and says, I've done pretty bad on the test, but I've done okay on other things. I'm curious, what kind of grade can I expect in this class? And I would tell Larry, well, let's take a look at the syllabus, how I'm going to calculate grades, and we'll put the formula into the spreadsheet and do a little what-if analysis. We'll try to predict an outcome from an incomplete set of data by looking at likely scenarios. So the first thing I need to do is to put in an average here. Okay, now this spreadsheet's going to be a little different than the one that I demonstrated previously, but I'm doing most of the same things. So if I put in an average, a weighted average, I'm going to have to construct the computational expression myself. There is no built-in function to do this, so I'm going to have to use a formula. And I'm going to have to follow the rules of algebra regarding order of operations and, think this through myself. So what I intend to do is to add up all the tests first, then divide by the number of tests second, and then multiply through by my weighting factor third to weight the average of the test at, in this case, 60%. Then I'm going to turn around and do the same thing with the quizzes and projects. Add them up, step 1, divide by the number of quizzes and projects, step 2, and then multiply through by the weighting factor, step 3. So to add up all the test scores are in the case of Larry, he's on row 5, so we're looking at C5, D5, E5. So C5 plus D5 plus E5. And that closes the interior set of parentheses. So in algebra, the order of operations is you perform anything inside of parentheses ahead of everything else, and if there happen to be parentheses within parentheses, then you perform the operations within the interior set of parentheses and work your way out to the exterior set. So this is going to get done by my having inserted that into the interior set of parentheses. It's going to get done first. Then I'm going to divide by 3, close that off. That'll get done next. And then finally, I'm going to multiply through by my weighting factor, 60% or 0.6, and close that off. And so it will find the sum of the 3 cells, then the average, and then weight the average at 60%. And to that, I want to do the same thing with the quizzes and projects. So I'll be adding up F5 plus G5 plus H5 plus I5 plus J5 plus K5. All right, so I'm going to be adding up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 scores. Close off the parenthesis. The addition will get done first. I'll divide by 6, the number of items in the list. I'll multiply through times 0.4. And I'm going to go up to the formula bar and inspect the expression. So, there's every opportunity here to make some kind of mistake. And if I do, even something that seems pretty insignificant, the spreadsheet program is not going to accept that expression. It'll return an error message, and so I have to be extremely careful, especially when using formulas. So again, that part of it looks all right. I start with F and work through K. That looks all right. I'm going to click at the very end of the formula bar there, beyond the last character, that last closing parenthesis, and then strike the enter key. And what I can tell Larry at this point is that the way things stand now, worst case scenario, if you don't show up for class and you get a 0, you're going to barely pass the class, assuming that I'm a nice guy and budge just a little bit. I'm going to pretend it takes 60% to get a passing grade, a D, but if Larry does nothing beyond what he's done already, he'll be pushing it. I'll have to yield a little bit in order to be able to pass him. So Larry says, well, there's no way I'm going to, skip the class or skip the third test. And so let's look at a different scenario. A most likely case scenario. So most likely he's going to end up with a test 3 score that's somewhere, in the range of test 1 and test 2. So I'll just make a guess that he might get a 50. If he comes in, gets 50%, as soon as I hit the enter key, it's going to recalculate. The spreadsheet program is going to recalculate this formula, and he ends up with a 69.6%. Okay, so again, he's sitting there on the bubble, and probably needs to do a little better than 50%. So I say, okay, well, let's consider what happens if you're sitting under a tree, an apple falls on your head, and you get 100%. All of a sudden, everything becomes perfectly clear. You study real hard, and you get a perfect score. A perfect score would get Larry, technically it would be a C, but I would yield a little bit, and he would end up getting a B in the class. So this might give Larry some idea as to how much time he needs to spend studying, and if it's during finals week or something like that where he's pressed for time, where he has to manage his time very carefully, this ability to predict outcomes from an incomplete set of data, otherwise known as what-if analysis, this ability to perform these computations is very, very useful in terms of, in this case, someone being able to manage their time studying. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and drag by the fill handle and copy down, and you'll notice that it copies a 100. Wasn't exactly what I intended to do, but I'll give him a 100, and I'll give a 44 here, and I'll give a 88 here, and I'll give a 100 here. Okay, must have been an easy third test. Okay, so there we have it. All the grades are in place, and what I want to show you now is that depending upon what is stored in the base cell, the spreadsheet program will either copy the contents of the base cell in an absolute way, in other words, without making any changes, or it will make an adjustment. If what's stored in the base cell is a formula or function, the spreadsheet program by default will, if I use the fill handle and copy, will copy in a relative way. It will adjust it for the row that it's being copied into. So whereas the formula that I typed in for Larry references cells in row 5, if I copy that formula into row 6, it will, amazingly enough, compute the same value. How can that be? That's amazing. Okay, well, I'm going to copy here, fill up this direction, and hopefully I get different values. I do. So interestingly, these two values worked out to be exactly the same. That was just purely by chance. But when I copy from a formula or a function from one cell to another, the spreadsheet program will automatically make an adjustment. If I copy through a column, the spreadsheet program will change the row coordinates. If I copy across the row, the spreadsheet program will change the column coordinates. So there we have it. We have computed grades, and I think this is a good stopping point. So when we come back to this example, I'm going to show you how to program the spreadsheet so that it assigns grades, so that it looks at the weighted average, and in this case determines that it's an A, looks at this value, determines that it's a C, and so forth. So we'll look at a function that's available in Excel to make decisions, and we'll make decisions regarding the grade. We'll make a different decision regarding whether they pass or fail. All right, so this concludes the video, and we will return back to this example shortly.